pushing me. Time is money is what they said, but
Police usually deal with whatever they are. We need to give them a fair hearing and then deal with them. Otherwise, we'll never accomplish anything. We've already spent enough time on this issue, and I'm afraid I'm going to cause us to spend a little bit more today, and I apologize ahead of time.
no, I want to hear where your thoughts are.
I think there's a lot of problems with that ordinance, but obviously if you're not for it, you would think there were problems with it. So I come in with that.
Now, which one of these are you looking at?
That's not the choices.
This is the one he handed out.
Right, but that's not the choices.
Change something.
There's basically just four choices you either. No, but that's not what they're talking about choice-wise. That's what you do if you continue to pass.
It is 1 o'clock, and I'll call the special meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Roach?
Here.
Mr. Haynes?
Here.
Mr. Bowers? Here. Mr. Hagan? Here. Mayor May?
Here, we do have a quorum present, and we have a couple of things on the agenda today. First one is a work-ready community presentation by Carmen Inman from our local Chamber of Commerce. Carmen, good to have you.
Well, I'm Carmen Inman, the Executive Director of the Frankfort Area Chamber of Commerce, and I am proud to present to the City of Frankfort our Work Ready Community in Progress signs for you all to be putting up in the city. The certified Work Ready Community in Progress reflects that Frankfort Franklin County has demonstrated progress and commitment to the future improvement of the quality of our workforce. The Kentucky Workforce Investment Board certifies counties based on establishing 6 criteria. One is high school graduation rates, national career readiness certificates, community commitment, educational attainment, soft skills development, and internet availability. Work Ready in Progress indicates that our community has met or surpassed some, but not all, of this criteria, and that our community leaders in economic development, business and industry, education, local government, and workforce development are working to meet all 6 criteria within the next 3 years. By creating and implementing plans to meet or exceed these criteria, Frankfort and Franklin County can enjoy a competitive advantage with employers, site selection committees, and economic developers. I want to personally thank former Commissioner Celeste Wilder and former City Manager Chief Mark Wilhoit for their work on this project with us, and also for the City of Frankfort for their resolution to support our Work Ready Community program. We look forward to working with Commissioner Roach and City Manager Tim Sitzoff, and along with the city as we proceed in making Frankfort a Work Ready community. I'd like to present the signs to the mayor. If that's... And there's 2. And we ask, you're welcome, and we ask this, our group asks that you please let us know when you unveil the signs, because they would like to be there. And then here's also a letter from the transportation telling you what you can and cannot do with those signs.
We appreciate the work by the former commissioner, and look forward to Commissioner Roach attending meetings and reporting back to us. And we will give these to our public works staff for placement in the proper place.
All right. Thank you all very, very much. I hate to run, but now I have to go do the same thing with county.
Thank you.
All right, next we have our planning director, Gary Mueller, to discuss form-based code. So as he comes forward, just pause for a second. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Good afternoon.
I was making sure.
We spoke about this last Monday, and you all wanted to continue it for further discussion. And I didn't prepare anything additional, but we did send out the presentation that was sent last Monday that we went over. Be happy to answer any questions you may have or assist any way I can.
Commissioners have any questions for our planning director? Commissioner Haynes?
The one letter dated July the 8th, those are the 4 choices if it continues.
Yes.
Well,
If you select a task force and move forward, that would be the steps of procedures.
Okay, just want to make sure I understood that.
And at the last meeting, I think at least two of you mentioned it. You were between either supporting the task force but giving them specific direction on limiting the historic preservation side of it, or not going with the task force and directing staff to amend the current zoning of the properties to make it more flexible. I think that's where we were at last Monday.
Yes. Or at least that's where I was at. I don't know about the rest of them. And I guess this is where we need to find out where the rest of the commission sits with this. I personally would like to see the task force taken in place with more guidance on what we'd like to be seen. With this, in the meantime, since we've done the task force, we also have had the Greening of America's Capitals that have come in, and they've looked at the same area. And they had some really nice ideas. What's limited with that is, 60% of the property is owned by the city or state, so that we can't really do too much with the property. 40% of that is publicly owned, with the limitations coming in from what was previously set up by the task force, but there was the planning commission that didn't approve it, gave it back to the task force, and now we're just kind of stuck because the task force basically ended with its time. Is that right, Gary? I'm just trying to give a little...
Yes, and the only other background, it was 60% about public, 40% private.
Okay.
And you also have directed staff to amend the current historic preservation guidelines.
Right.
And hopefully making them more flexible, administratively approvable. We're finishing up the survey results and working on the code changes to get those on that schedule that I had provided in the past. We're trying to get it all done and start public meetings late August, early September.
Do you have any further, Commissioner?
Yes. Personally, I would rather, I'm just going to say it again, I would like to see a task force with the board setting up limitations and guidelines of what we would like to see. For me, what I have the most issue with, I guess, is trying to set up the old with the new. How do we modernize with us being historically guided? If we have an empty lot, or somebody tears down a building and there's an empty lot, and they're restricted on how they can build it, with history in mind, with historical aspects. But sometimes it seems nice to modernize something as well. We have the empty lot where the lumber yard was that needs to be developed. And these guidelines that we set right now holds that property there within the task force. Am I correct? That sits within what this task force is setting up?
It's within the boundary, yes.
So what this task force, or what we guide staff to do, is going to, in essence, set up what that property can do. True?
Yes.
So it comes to, what do we as a commission and what do we as citizens within downtown Frankfort want to see? And if form code is going to work, we're going to start with a small street, and then if it works, the idea is that it moves out further within our city. My understanding is.
Potentially, yes.
Potential. So I like the idea of having a task force with community members trying to set up and help regulate how we're going to redesign our city when redesign happens.
Any others?
Well, I'd just like to say, based on the four choices given, most of the people that have contacted me would go with the no task force, direct staff to work on amending, and so that the district would be more flexible.
I guess I'm in one of two places. I'm either with, and I can go either way, I'm with Commissioner Haynes on that, or I'm with just no task force and keep current regulations as is. I'm less in favor of that one. I think that, appreciate what Commissioner Hedden said. I think, though, the problem is that I just don't think that, and I don't know how it came about, but I don't think that was the right place to start.
agree with
I
that.
think when you read the definition of, and I'm new to this, but when you read the definition of form-based code, you're looking for something that's going to create character and have an appropriate form and appropriate rhythm. And I fail to see how that will ever occur, given the government buildings that we have along this street. And so I just don't think this is the right place to do it, and I think we'll just end up making it worse. And then I guess my last thing is if you happen to be a current business owner living on that, having a business on that street, they believe it's an illegal taking. Now, I'm not saying as a matter of law that it is, but if you happen to own a business down there and all of a sudden they're changing all these things, you may find you'll never be able to sell it. So in a sense, you've been stripped of the value, and I realize the other side's going to say, well, this is going to make it so much better, you're going to have a much more valuable piece of property. But I don't believe that if I was a business owner on that street, I wouldn't be willing to take that risk. So I'd come down with Commissioner Haynes.
I don't want a task force. And for now, I would say leave it as is, and we can explore amending later. But at this point, the people that I've heard from on Second Street are not wanting to bring back a task force. So we just got through with the task force, so let's just leave it for now. And I guess my vote, we're not actually voting, but I would direct us to not bring back a task force or not appoint a task force.
May I, Mayor?
Commissioner, go ahead.
I would just like to say that being a commissioner that was on the board when the task force was set up, in retrospect, it's not the best street that the city of Frankfort ever could have picked. I personally would have liked to see form code take place somewhere closer to maybe where Indian Hills is, where they have developments with businesses within that neighborhood, that not everything needs to be directed toward downtown and South Frankfort. But it was a grant that we got. I believe that the task force and staff, and myself included, that we should have outreached more toward the business owners. We should have discussed more of what was happening versus, here's a letter, here's what's going on, versus going and communicating, saying that this was being explored and looked at. So in retrospect, yes, things could have been done different. If the will of the commission is to end the task force, I will support you guys in moving forward and directing it towards staff. I still think that when it comes to this area, we still need to look at how do we get old mixed with new for development. And mixed use development too, so that you can combine residential with commercial.
Agreed.
Well, it sounds like for now, then there's not support for moving forward with the task force, that we will not have a task force and staff will continue to work on this issue at direction of the commission. And for now, I guess, just hold tight until commission gives further direction.
Can I ask something real
Right.
quick, Mayor? Even though we're ending it at this moment, I still, even though Commissioner Bowers was for not getting any kind of further input from you all on possible modifications, I don't know what everybody else feels, but I'd kind of like to, because I do know the way things tend to work is if we end it right now, it may never rise again as far as any kind of options to look at that we could, because I do believe that there may be some things we can do down there that can stimulate development.
Well, I would agree. If you were
So-
to have
Continues every
proposals
commission
to bring
jumping
back
out.
to us.
Right, so I'd still like to get some stuff from you all and look at it as soon as possible. If that's all right, Mayor.
Sure.
That's fine with me.
Okay, no objections.
I mean, you already said that, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what you said.
Do you want to add anything else?
I do, please. Thank you. I appreciate the feedback and the information and the direction. I do have to report back to the planning commission. So would it be best to just withdraw the text amendment at this time from the planning commission, so that they don't make a subsequent request to you all one way or another?
I think that would probably be the better protocol.
Okay.
Unless there's if there are no objections. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have the city employee health plan discuss. I'm sorry, I want to introduce, I just looked over and saw former Mayor John Sauer here with us. Thank you, Mayor, for being here. And former Mayor and City Commissioner. longtime Frankfort supporter. Thank you for y'all for being here. City Health, excuse me, Health Plan discussion. Nancy McDowell from Wells Fargo. I'm sorry, Norma. I don't know why I said.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Sorry, Norma.
That's okay, that's okay.
Sorry, Ms. McDowell.
I answer to anything.
Sounds like me.
You're welcome. Okay. Lots of breathing material to put you to sleep.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I acknowledge Daryl Huff, our longtime insurance agent, is in the back of the room if anyone else has questions.
Okay, so the last time I met with you all, we discussed maybe looking at several options with the health plan for the city. And you petitioned me to go back and maybe give you some different scenarios of a conservative plan, a 4 or 5 year plan out to look at, some cost effective measures that we could take into place to maybe get your plan more in line with other plans in the state government, and just to kind of capture what's happening out in other municipalities. So what we did was we took and looked at 3 different scenarios. We did a conservative scenario, we did one with minimal change, and then we did one fairly aggressive. The mindset I think that you all need to take is that at some point in time, you're probably going to have to make some changes. When you do it, and how you do it, and how aggressive, this might help you a little bit. Randy was good enough to take your budget and do some costing to see if some of these changes were put into place, what effect they might have. And the other thing is, I think you as a city need to decide what your mission statement is, how you want to handle your employee benefit package. If you want to look at just the employee, or if you look at the family benefit, and where you want to go cost effectively. I think your budget will determine what you do. I think Randy and I have come several times just to bring to your attention that some changes might need to be made. They hadn't been made for a lot of years, one of the reasons why financially they didn't have to be made, and a lot of the health insurance was not changing that much at that point in time. We just want to make sure that something doesn't happen and you've not made any changes, and then you have to make some really aggressive changes that would hurt your employees, because the last thing that you want to do is to hurt the employees here at the city. And I think that's all our focus is, how do we get to where you need to be, and budget-wise, what do you need to do? So I'm not going to go through everything because there's a lot to go through today, but I think it's something that you can look at. If you look past the scenarios, because I think what in the long run you might be able to do is pick and choose some things that you want to do. Budget-wise, look at the cost that you have. I know that, financially, looks like things are running really, really good right now with this plan year. That's a very positive thing. So there's probably not a need for a real aggressive change to be made. But these are just options. I think you'll end up taking things from each category and maybe picking and choosing. Wellness is going to be a big thing with healthcare reform. Even though some of it got pushed back to 2015, wellness is going to be a very integral part. I think the wellness program that you have in place now needs to be reevaluated every year, quarterly. Look at, are you getting any results? Is what you have in place working? Those are things that I think are constantly need to be reviewed. Also, your cost, your claims, everything's driven by your claims cost. If you have a couple of bad years with some high claims, that might make you make some determinations of what you need to do with your plan design. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is in 2018, as it stands right now, there's going to be a tax for Cadillac plans. that Plan 3 that you have, that really high plan, might fit into that. We don't have all the guidelines and regulations right now, but we need to be looking at that, and you need to be looking at that if you do not want to pay those taxes and those penalties in 2018, that we might need to kind of gradually work towards, or aggressively, whatever you want to do, to make sure you're in line so you don't have some additional penalties for that plan. And then after the 3 scenarios, Randy was kind enough to do a lot of numbers for your budgets, this year's budgets, and with some of the plan design changes that we made as far as changing the employee contribution, I think that's where your plan design is rich, but also your employee contribution level is an area that's kind of gotten off whack probably since the 90s, the middle 90s. There hadn't been a change in that family premium side, so it kind of got out of whack. And I think I've given you some information before about what the state does, what the county does, and how they've controlled their cost and how they split up the employee contribution. Those are areas where you'll be able to make some changes and maybe minimal changes going forward, but plus some plan design changes that can help get your cost in line and make that contribution level. A lot of people think that if your employees don't have any skin in the game, they're not going to help control the cost. We made a change a few years ago, 2011, and added an HSA in the plan where that first dollar amount employees have responsibility. That's been very advantageous. I really think that's part of what some of your cost reductions have been, because we've engaged employees, educated employees about that first dollar amount. And when you have a copay, or if you are just paying a copay for something, or your exposure is very low, you really don't look at trying to control the cost. So I think that has helped with some of the costs going down, and I think that is a plan of the future. A lot of your companies and a lot of your organizations are going to an HSA or higher deductible plans, engaging employees more in that first dollar amount. But these numbers are here to kind of match up. But one of the things, the final sheet that I kind of wanted to bring to your attention, the back of the package, because I think these are the areas where you can look at. We had the TPA pull some of the claims out. Last year, in the last 12 months, there have been 2,527 visits to the primary care physician or specialist. Right now, you've got co-pays in there. Just by increasing the co-pays, $5, $10, or $15 amount, you can see the cost savings. Not a real large cost savings, but it engages the employee a little bit more because they have more skin in the game. The other thing is the emergency room copay. Right now, it's currently $75 for the people on the PPO plans. If you increase that emergency room copay, there's several scenarios there. You can see what that cost shifting will do. I can tell you the majority of plans out there have anywhere from a $150 to $250 copay for the emergency room. A lot of people had gotten used to the emergency room as a primary care physician. So if you raise that copay a little bit, sometimes they don't go there for a primary care physician. So that's the mindset out in the industry right now. The other things, the other areas that you can make some changes in, and if you all decide you want to do some individual changes for this 2014 plan year, here are some areas that we can look at by increasing the deductible. Currently, your current Plan 2 has a $1,500 deductible, and Plan 3 has a $1,000 deductible. The out-of-pocket in Plan 2 is $3,000, and in Plan 3 is $2,000. Those are two areas that a little more cost shifting back in plan design to the employee can get you some savings. We can look at doing some other scenarios and actually with your claims, take the last 12 months if you want to make a change and find out the percentage of revenue that would have realized. Also, the co-insurance, your Plan 2 right now has a 20% co-insurance, but your Plan 3 only has a 5% co-insurance. So that's 5% of that out-of-pocket is all that employee has to pay when they incur something that goes to co-insurance. The co-pays, some people put co-pays in for in-hospital or inpatient procedures. And then your pharmacy. Your pharmacy, you can change your formulary, you can change your co-pay cost. You can also add a 4th tier. Right now, you only have a 3-tier pharmacy, and both of your 2 PPO plans have the same co-pays, which is $10, $25, and $40. So those are other areas besides what we put in these scenarios that you can look at making some changes to. Like I said, whether it's 2014, which this next plan year, or if you want to wait to 2015. Other things I think we've talked about, are some groups are looking at surcharges for spouses. If the spouse has the opportunity to have coverage somewhere else, there can be surcharges. There's lots of scenarios, like I said, and lots of individual pieces, but we wanted to come with 3 plans to give you some examples of what minimal tweaking would look like, then being a little bit aggressive, and then very aggressive in that last scenario. And I think that probably of a mix of those things, you should be able to start beginning to get to the path. If you don't, Randy was good enough to also put in there where he projected the cost to be, and he used, I think, the percentage of 11% increase, an annual 11% increase. That's kind of the way we've run the last 5 or 6 years, and we averaged that out, so that's what we did. If everything stayed the same and you made no changes whatsoever, you're looking at, the 28 million for that plan year of, for the 6-year total. So, you're looking at the projection, almost a $2 million increase from 13-14, which was budgeted, to 18-19. So I think that, if you don't make any changes, the costs are going to go up. The medical costs just keep rising constantly. Questions?
Any questions for Ms. McDowell? Commissioner Roach?
The numbers that you and I talked about, these are different.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
In other words, the cost projections are much more marginal
Right.
going
Right.
forward.
Right.
What, I guess my first question would be, under the aggressive strategy, we have our costs going down to 2.99 million after 6 years. Why such a significant decrease?
Because of the cost share of the employee and taking away that Plan 3, we felt like taking that Plan 3 away.
'Cause it might be a Cadillac.
It's Cadillac.
So that's where your money, all
Yeah.
your savings comes.
Right. And then the cost share on the premiums for the employee for the family cost. Because right now, the city has the bulk of that cost. Back in 1994 or 5, I think the cost was 50%. The employee paid 50% of the premium, and then the city paid
Yeah.
50%. And there for a long time, it never changed.
It basically has not changed since then. It was
Just-
200 and 200, now it's 215 to 1,700.
Right, right.
If you, the way you all got this in here,
Right.
it looks like it's, if you adopted it under the scenarios that you've given us, it actually would not be adopted to the 2015 year, is that correct?
Right.
How, if we want to adopt it now, how fast do we need to move?
Well, we probably, within the next month, by the 1st of August, so that we can run the numbers with the TPA, get everything lined out, get the plan design and everything ready, because we'll have to have everything ready by the 1st of September and finish everything up, so we'll be able to communicate it to employees, because a lot of
This plan
employees...
starts January 1, correct?
January 1, but we do enrollment in October.
And you have to
And-
educate.
Yeah, to educate, and also so people can make a decision and wait for the state. A lot of people, their spouses work for the state, so they can make sure the other employers, they can compare their plan design. It's becoming more and more a budgetary item within a family to look at where it's more cost-effective for the...
Where to have it.
where to have it, which spouse to have it with, or to split it up and divide it.
Under the strategy 3 on
Uh-huh.
the aggressive one, what does that strategy have anything to do with spouses?
Well, we do have that in there, but contribution level
That's what gets it.
is going to drive it.
Right.
If somebody wants to buy and you want to keep this rich plan as long as you can with healthcare reform, you just have to, they would have to purchase it. It's really a buy-up plan. You make that contribution level there. And most people don't need a plan this rich, but because it's here, and the fear, that's why the education comes in, to explain to people what you really need. Because if you had a catastrophic illness, the plan you really would want to be in is the health savings account, the high deductible plan, because there's a true cap with that. Once you hit that high dollar amount, that $3,000, everything's paid at 100%. Where with your PPO plans, you have your deductible, your out-of-pocket, but your copays still go on. Your copays never go away. So you could have copays ending up costing you $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000, and especially on the pharmacy side, your copays can add up if you've got something catastrophic where you have a lot of drugs or you have a lot of doctor's visits. So contribution strategy kind of drives enrollment, and that's a good cost savings, and passing some of that on to the employees, which hadn't been passed on for over 10 years.
These other, where you had that category of other areas, those are areas that aren't included in the
That's right.
3 changes, correct?
That's right.
And the change in the plan design on raising deductibles is not included as well.
Right, no, it is not. It's just other areas, if you want us to go back and get some scenarios, you want to make changes to the deductible and the out-of-pocket, we can actually run the past 12 years' claims with the TPA to find out the percentage of savings that you would have. And it would be an estimate because we don't know what the future 12 months claims are going to be, but we can get a percentage of what cost savings it would be.
Well, I have a few more, but let's see what everybody else has got. I've taken enough.
Okay, Commissioner Head.
First of all, I would just like to thank you again for coming back and presenting it. We had to make some tough choices with the last commission, at least changing insurance. And I'm always for less changes.
I know.
And I understand, and I'm a physical therapist assistant, I work in the hospital. I understand the hard stuff that people go through
Yeah.
in order just trying to get better. When it comes to co-pays, the fact that insurance are denying patients, the fact that as therapists, we're trying to call, insurance is refusing, saying these patients don't need any care because of such changes people have made to insurance companies, even though they've never even met the patient. And I would hate for that to happen to one of our staff members, for an insurance to change so much
Right.
that they can't get the care that they need, or that it costs so much that they just don't get the care that they need. I have patients that come in with $75 copays. I don't want to see that happen to the city of Frankfort. I do think that there are ways that we can go without having to make such drastic measures, without making, and I like how you've made these future plans. If anything, I would have to go for the more conservative one, the strategy one.
Right.
But I would like to see those numbers, if you can get from the TPA, that.
For changing the deductible and the
Yeah.
out-of-pocket? Okay, we'll do that.
I don't know where the rest of the commission, if they would want to see those numbers, but I would.
We might, you might look at moving towards getting rid of that Plan 3
Right.
and having 2 plans. And maybe the 2 plans be, right now you have the 2 PPO, maybe kind of do a blend of the 2 PPOs you have now, where you have the 2 plans. Because eventually, you're going to have to get away from Plan 3. Or you're going to have
Right.
to shift some of the gloss more of the cost over.
I don't use the city insurance, so I don't always know exactly what it is. I do have the paperwork at home, and I have to make decisions to help make those changes. What percentage of our employees are on that Plan 3 right now? Do you know?
I think, Tim, I think it's about half, isn't it?
About
Half or better, yes,
Yes.
on Plan 3, yes.
Thank you.
Any other commissions before I return back to Commissioner Roach?
Looking at the numbers that you provided here, actually, strategy 2 looks the best just looking at it, because we have to move somewhere because we know what's coming. But I'm more interested in the future of the educating of the employees,
Right.
because, that does make it's a big factor.
It is, and we can see that from 2011, when we really did a lot of education, and a lot more people went on the HSA, that high deductible plan, than really everyone thought would go here. But once you start explaining how the plan works, they understand it, because there's some people that don't have any charges whatsoever, that all they do is go for their annual physical. And the city contributes to that. They build up that money for when they do have an occurrence. And everything that is preventative is covered at 100% with healthcare reform. So there's some advantages to that. And it's just explaining that to people, because it's very complicated, and you have to take the time to do that. And, we had great participation. And I think you just have to keep on doing that, because healthcare's changing for all of us.
Right. And I just appreciate you breaking it down the way you did, because this is new to me, because I saw the very first one, which I didn't have a clue.
Right,
But this one, now it's finally being flushed out, and I appreciate it.
right. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I did want to ask if the city manager would be able to make a recommendation and then return to questions.
Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you to Norma and HR Director Randy Donahue. They did an outstanding job, I think, of putting together the scenarios that were requested back in May by the commission. So, job well done. My recommendation would be for the conservative plan, Plan 1, but I would also suggest some additions, and that be in the other options, the plan design, with regard to deductibles. I wouldn't want them in a place where they're too high for our employees to afford. I appreciate what Commissioner Hedden had to say. My reasoning is at least twofold. Number one, we made some significant changes in 2011. The staff did an excellent job of trying to educate our staff, and our plan is going in the right direction. We're not sure if it's a one-year fluke, if you will, or whether it is a move in the right direction, but we have significant savings in this fiscal year, this calendar year. So, and the other thing I think is very important, we are a service organization. We rely heavily on our employees, and I want to make sure that we are able to attract and maintain good employees within our organization. So I like the conservative, but I like adding to it. I would also be a little bit more aggressive with our Plan 3, because we all know we need to move off of that plan given healthcare reform. Thank you, Your Honor.
No others. I'll return to Commissioner Roach.
I guess I'd kind of like to say a couple of things and then see if we can't kind of go in a direction, perhaps. Most of this is just math, and it's really not hard math, but it's hard to make decisions. And that is if you take choice number 1, which is the most conservative choice, your costs are going to go up 40% or a little less in 6 years, which is a little less than 7% a year. Revenue to the city is nowhere near that, going up every year. The last 5 years, we've been roughly a little negative or a little positive, and based on the latest plan and stuff on number of buildings, et cetera, it's not growing. So if our overall goal was to lower personnel costs as a percentage of our overall budget, Plan 1 does the opposite of that. So I don't think Plan 1 is aggressive enough to meet that goal, which is we can't continue to have health care costs outstrip the revenue coming into the city unless you just want to raise taxes in a couple of years. And if we want to do that, we can just go ahead and say it. but I don't think most people want to do that. And it may be put them off 3 or 4 years, but we can't afford that. I don't believe we can afford that level of increase. And I do understand about employees, and it is a disincentive to good employees to have a health care plan that's not as good. But we've got to remember, we have, I believe, and there may be some out there I don't know about, but I believe we've got the second best health care plan in Franklin County. The state's plan's not as good as ours. The plant boards is about the same or a little better, but I think everybody else, private sector, anywhere else, is worse. And I think at the end of the day, as much as we need to support our employees, we represent the citizens. And if we are taxing our citizens to provide a health care plan that none of them have, that doesn't seem to me to be the right course of action. And I think education, the things that we're doing, is going great, but I just don't think Plan 1 is enough. The other thing I guess I'm worried about is putting things off. I would go ahead and I would seek the commission's support to go ahead and start making changes now, educate our staff now, and have them apply for the 2014 year as opposed to putting it off a year. If we put things off and continue to put things off, and I know no one has said that, but that's our nature. If we put things off, there'll be a day when people's health insurance will be cut in half. Because when we get up to $15,000 and $20,000 per employee, how high can you go? And so I would promote going more. I know it's no surprise, going more aggressive, and I would promote starting now and really educating people well, because even the aggressive changes are not that significant. It's always significant if you're the one paying for it, but it's not as significant as what it could have been. So I'd like to see whether we choose Plan 1, Plan 2, or Plan 3, or a combination, or change some of the plan designs with higher copays, or do some of the other things. I'd like to see us come up with a timeline so that could be done, and some of it could start being applied in 2014.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any comments or questions from commissioners? None? It's okay if you don't. Just asking.
Mr. Mayor, can I speak?
Well, let me finish real quick, because we don't have citizen comments since it's a special meeting. I don't think I can actually.
Well, we don't have them listed on the agenda.
Sorry.
Can
It's
a
because it's a
commissioner-
special meeting. I know that's.
Can a commissioner ask to hear from a citizen?
Commissioner can ask a question, sure.
Could I ask for what? Ask you, tell me what you want to tell me.
I'm preparing.
Well, let me just make one quick question. Let me ask the solicitor.
If a commissioner asks, then we generally allow that.
Okay, but I was going to say, it doesn't need to be real specific, does it, with her question?
I'm just wondering what's
I
in
just
his
wanted-
mind right
okay,
now.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm
And we
preparing-
can let you come up and after,
Is that okay?
sure. And we'll just go ahead and answer Commissioner Bauer's question. Mr. Pro? Just have to come over here if you don't mind, so we can get it on the record in here. Just state your name for the...
My name is Dennis Kroll, and I have Kroll Insurance across the river. And I was preparing a competitive bid, and I'm wondering when you want to see that so that you can make a educated decision on which plan you're going to take. I was told August the 2nd originally, and then I was told by Randy it'd be later than that, so I don't know when it is.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, do you know?
Well, I'm going to take a shot. We are on a self-funded plan. And so the city, the insurance that we purchase is reinsurance. In other words, we pay for all claims up to an amount, say $75,000 per
Right.
employee. And that reinsurance, it will not be reviewed until, we'll be renewing in January, is that correct? So we'll be soliciting bids for reinsurance in October, September, October?
In August, I think we're trying
In
to lock
August,
it all
okay.
down.
Well, the reason that I originally talked to Randy and you was the fact that the plan has not been redone since 1999. And it needed some major redoing, and then with healthcare reform, it needs major redoing. And so I am preparing a competitive bid to look at healthcare reform, and I've been in self-funding for years, and I was told I would have an opportunity, and I was just wondering what date you all wanted to look at it, was my question. I can have it here by August the 2nd. I'll try and have it here sooner if you absolutely need to have it here sooner, but I would like both of them to be here at the same time.
I hope we're able to compare apples and apples, because
No problem.
the plan that we have.
No, it'll all be self-funding. I mean, it'll
Yes.
be the same,
Yes.
same plan design. I mean, it'll be the same accounting that you're doing now with self-funding. There may be some different things in the plan design, but that's where my expertise would come in versus their expertise. And I think you've got some areas that you need some expertise.
We can have them by October, or August 2nd.
Okay, August 2nd.
Is that a meeting?
We have a meeting on July 22nd, and then the next meeting would be August
August 12th.
August 12th.
Would August 12th be the date then?
But if you can have them to us by August 2nd, to staff, to Randy, our HR director, that would be
All right,
very well.
okay, August 2nd. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
You will. That answer your question, Commissioner Bowers? Sure. Any other? Commissioner Roach?
Well, I guess, since nobody said anything, before, I don't know what are we able to, Mayor, are we able to vote in this? Okay. Well then, I don't know the parliamentary way to go about this, but
You can just make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and start cost savings for health insurance effective January 1st, 2014, and that staff works with your great work.
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo, to come up with their proposals, and that we be able to take a look at those to see if they're in line with what we're doing, and we would want to get that done by,
Before September, the September meeting.
so that we could educate staff, if in
Right.
fact that occurred.
Right.
And so it would need to be done by, is that something that would be done, Tim, would that need to be done administratively? Or would that need to come to a vote?
I believe that would have to come to a vote, and
Okay.
we would probably look at our our voting session in August.
Okay. Could you follow all of that? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ramon.
Your Honor?
I'll second that so we can get to the discussion part.
Okay. The motion by Commissioner Roach and a second by Commissioner
Did I
Haynes.
understand that we would actually vote at the vote meeting on this in August?
That would be my...
Or did you just, okay,
Yes.
that we wouldn't vote till September? Or
Okay,
vote
so-
in August? Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and now just discuss, and if anyone needs to have the motion restated, we can get close to that, I believe.
May I just ask a
Yeah,
question?
go ahead.
Mayor? Do you want us to propose or to reintroduce the three options, and you will vote on one of the three options? Or are you recommending a particular option in today's motion?
The motion was to begin cost savings, but I don't know that Commissioner Roach specified one of those three. We can, and if need be, we
We
can
can
always
provide all three.
restate withdraw that motion, restate a new motion, or amend it. It's easier really if you just withdraw and start over, but we can do amendments if you all want to.
Can you, can I have a comment?
Sure. Okay.
Well, Mr. Zizoff is making a recommendation, and Commissioner Roach has given some valid points, and Norma has told us that we've had a good year, and basically what I'm hearing is that we don't have this huge problem right upon us, but we will down the road. So if the plan could be that is presented to us, some sort of meeting point between the conservative and a little bit more aggressive, if there could be some sort of halfway point, because I think Commissioner Hedden is saying conservative as well. Is that possible?
I would say yes if I'm...
Okay. And I'm asking Commissioner Roach if we, do you think we could reach some point
Well, I think if we include that and do some of those plan design changes with the co-pays and some of those other things, that we could come up with something that I think all of us could live with. I guess what I'm saying is, whatever changes we make, we can't continue to have, and this year was great for us, I admit that, we can't continue to have changes and say that we've made healthcare reform and our costs go up 7%. We're not raising revenues 7% coming into the city, so we can't raise, our costs can't go up that unless you just want to devote less and less resources to city services. It's pretty simple.
cut a little more than conservative?
We can do
Just a
that.
little more.
Commissioner Hedden.
I don't know.
I would just like to say that what I understand being said is that contribution changes will start in 2015 versus 2016. Am I hearing that correct? So that we could still do for strategy 1, but contribution changes start in 2014 versus 2015, which is written right here. Am I understanding that correct, that you would rather start with contribution changes in
Yes.
2014?
Answer your question back.
So that in essence, we could be following what city manager's office has proposed with strategy 1, while at the same time going with what Commissioner Roach has stated, just making contribution changes starting now instead of later. Is that what I'm hearing being proposed?
Yes,
Your attention.
yes, and since we can look at it each year and even during the year to see where the things are going, I think that we can make, I think it's gonna have to be one of these things you look at every year to see where you are. And rather than waiting, however long they waited from 1994 to 2011 to make a change, that we look at them each year so that this doesn't get out of control.
Right.
Any more questions, or are you ready for?
So we have a motion and a second and a bit of clarification already?
Yes.
We don't need to restate anything?
Unless you need it restated.
No, just call for the question.
Okay. No other discussion? Clerk, please call roll.
Mr. Roach?
Yes.
Commissioner Haynes?
Yes.
Mr. Bowers?
Yes.
Commissioner Hayden?
Yes.
Mayor May?
Yes, okay, that is approved. We'll have that as soon as staff can get that to us. Okay. All right, next discussion item is our fairness ordinance discussion, and we had the ordinance that our city manager drafted based on conversations from commissioners, and we need to, if there's some little tweaks, and I just had a couple, but I will let, you know, if you want to hear those first, if you want to make yours first, it doesn't matter.
We've got a couple. Roach has a couple.
More than a couple, you go.
Commissioner Bowers, go ahead.
Oh, me? I just have a few little ones. I think Commissioner Roach has some more. On page 2, they're just definitions, Mr. Moore. Under gender identity, it's just one psychological sense of being male or female. It's not just reserved for people who manifest an identity not traditionally associated with, because I think that sets us up for reverse discrimination. So I think that just needs to be reworded, that it is one psychological sense of being male or female. Because I have a gender identity too, even though mine is consistent with my femaleness. And then I had a question on familial status. The way that it's worded, maybe it's because it's written in the legal lingo, but it almost sounds like in that definition, it leaves out adults or single people, whereas down below, somewhere it talks about family includes a single individual, but up in familial status, it seems to be just totally concentrated on minors. And maybe I'm not understanding that, but
So,
Does anybody have a problem with my gender identity being redefined? Because it's not, gender identity is not reserved for people whose identity is different from their biological sex. We all have a gender identity, whether it's consistent with our biological sex or not. So does anybody have a problem with that definition? Because I've got a problem the way it's written here.
Well, Commissioner, I will look at that. I will say that the gender identity that's being protected with this change in the ordinance is you're now adding a protection for someone who is male who is now manifesting a female gender identity. And of course, you already have a protection against discrimination based on sex. So you already have that protection for sex, whether you're male or female, and this use of the term gender identity now protects the person who is a male and is manifesting a gender identity as a female, or a female manifesting a gender identity as a male.
But would it not just be easier to have a definition that's consistent with the globally accepted definition? We all have a gender identity, and I think that the last thing I want to see, number one, let me just say, I've been doing extensive research on my own, and I still haven't found one instance of employment discrimination or one instance of housing discrimination here in Frankfort. Now, that's not to say that it has not happened. That's to say I haven't found it, and I've gone out, and if you've been in Kroger, if you see me asking people, I'm looking for a reason to have this ordinance. What I have heard is people were bullied in school, people were beaten up on the street, people were excommunicated from the church, people were kicked out of their home, and I know that all of those are real, but I think that those situations are not what this ordinance is about. So I want to make sure, and this ordinance is going to pass, from what I can gather, that when it does pass, it doesn't set us up for a reverse discrimination situation. And so I just would like that definition to be more inclusive.
and what was your suggestion? Your language
Well,
suggestion?
That definition, gender identity, needs to read, one psychological sense of being male or female. I'm afraid that what's going to happen, we have, I think, community that is very accepting of people that are different in this way. And because this issue has become so polarized, I'm afraid that initially we're going to have a buildup of resentment, and that we're going to see problems that we haven't seen before in terms of employment and housing. And so I don't want to see any reverse discrimination against people that are, that don't fit the definition that is here. In other words, if I go into a business that's run by someone that is gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgendered or anything that's not what we consider what most of us are, I don't want to be discriminated against because I'm not those things. So I want to make sure that we're fair when we do this, because I believe it's going to be done, and I want to make sure we're just not. And let me just say, I have gotten phone calls and emails, not phone calls so much as emails, from all over the state. And I really think this issue would be best dealt with at the state level, because if I'm going to have to be responding to people in Louisville and Monterey and Monticello and Cadiz, I think that's how you pronounce it, then obviously this issue is important beyond the borders of Frankfort and Franklin County. And I think we're making a mistake to deal with it at this level. I think if people are that interested in lobbying, they need to lobby their legislatures and be more effective at that level rather than here. But I think we're going to proceed forward in Frankfort anyway. But when we do, if we do, I would just like this ordinance to represent and protect me as well, or anyone else that wants to be protected. But, Mr. Moore, I don't understand why the familial status is written that way.
But familial status protects people who are generally trying to get an apartment that have children. And that's who it's written to protect, and that's a long-standing definition for, that's been used for years in the
So I
area
guess
of
what I'm
fair
having
housing.
a problem with is that certain people are more special than other people. I like that word special groups, but it just seems familial status would include that, but not be limited to that. Maybe I'm just having a problem with the way things are written legally. So if it's tradition that we discriminate against people with children, is that what you're saying?
Well, this protects people with children, so that if you're a landlord and someone comes to see you, they want to be a tenant at your apartment, you can't preclude them just because they have children.
Do people that are childless not experience discrimination? Let me just say I know that we do. I know that we do. But I guess I've got a problem with this whole thing because I'm a single childless female who's middle-aged, and I just sometimes feel like I'm the one that's the most discriminated against, but I think everybody in the room feels that way at some time or another based on their characteristics. But I mean, I guess if that one has always been worded that way, that's fine, but gender identity is a brand new one. So I think that when it gets worded for the first time, it gets worded in a way that protects everyone, not just a select few. I would like to think that my gender identity counts as much as anyone else's. And when I figure out what my gender identity is, that's a joke, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, let me see if I had any more questions.
Well, you didn't get that one, because I have a question about the family. A family includes a single individual?
It should.
Yes.
That's what it said.
Now I have another question. This is a question, because I don't understand it. I guess I want you to give me, if you can, an example. On page 4, bottom, under exemptions. I think I'm understanding that, but can you give me a concrete example?
Just for a point, you're reading under section 96.07.
It's 96.07A. I think I understand that, but if I could just have a concrete example, I'm sure some of the public might like one as well.
And this concerns where a religious organization, association, or society, or institution operated by a religious organization has property. If they're renting that property just as a commercial endeavor, then the religious institution would be subject to the ordinance. If the religious institution if they're not renting it out to the general public, but they're making it available to maybe a certain religious group that is recognized as ongoing hardship, and they want to make available their facilities just to that group, then the ordinance would not apply to leasing that. And I guess the easiest way to do it is, let's say you have, some large church that owns
A parsonage.
a parsonage. They're going to be able to determine who lives in that parsonage, and they're not governed by this ordinance and figuring out who lives in a parsonage. But if they own a large rental development out on Stedmantown Lane in Indian Hills, 3 8-plexes, they are going to be governed by the provisions of this ordinance and renting those apartment units, since that's a commercial endeavor, just like any other investor.
Well, there's one more piece to that I think the second piece is what caused me to have a question. On this next page after that, it says, unless membership in the religion is restricted on account of race, color, national origin, sex, gender identity. So does that mean that if a religion did not allow transgendered people to be a part, that this would not apply to what you just said? Is that what that's saying?
That's correct.
Okay. So then they would have to rent the parsonage to whoever, is that what this is saying, correct?
To their members.
If it's available for rent, if the parsonage is for the parson, or the pastor, or the minister, then of course they can rent it to that person, or they
Okay.
can let that person live there.
Okay. What if the membership is not restricted, but the attitude is restrictive? In other words, those people that believe that homosexuality is a sin, they allow sin into their church, but they have an attitude that's negative towards that. What does this have to say about that? Anything?
It says unless membership in the religion is restricted. So if membership is
Membership.
restricted,
Not acceptance, but membership.
correct. I would think, Commissioner, you would agree that from a religious standpoint, we all commit sins on a daily basis.
Yes, we do. Well,
whether
no,
it's-
I haven't lately.
And I would agree with you.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that.
And I think that's why Commissioner Roach had a question as to whether or not religious institutions should enjoy a complete exemption.
We'll
from
bring that up a
ordinance.
little bit, yes, sir.
Okay. I want to make sure, there's one more.
Commissioner,
thing
would you,
in
let me
here.
just, so I can write this down on my notes. Which section were you referring to there?
96.07.
96.07,
I was,
the last
it was
part.
the same one, 96.07 on the next page, the next, top of the next page.
96.07A.
Yep. Here I've got a problem under 96.11, general exception.
And before you leave 96.07A, Commissioner, I would point out that that exemption language, all of the language except for what is underlined came from our fair housing ordinance that's currently in effect.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understand it, that's all. Under 9611, it is the fourth line down. Well, let me just start the sentence. Where a person by action or inaction violates violates all these sections of the city's code of ordinance due to a sincerely held religious belief. Now, I got a problem with sincerely because my interpretation of that might be quite different than everyone else's in the world. So how is that going to be, who's going to, is that your job, Mayor, to determine what is sincere or
It's the
not?
court system that came right out of the General Assembly.
I mean, it's just,
That's why it's gonna go to court.
okay.
That the sincerely held religious belief in section 96.11, that language is the language of House Bill 279 that was passed by the General Assembly during
Okay.
its last legislative session. And the sincerely held religious belief, the person or entity that is going to determine whether or not you have a sincerely held religious belief is initially either going to be the fairness coordinator, as this
Mayor.
ordinance is drafted, or perhaps the mayor, or it could also be a local human rights commission,
Okay.
or it could be the court. And of course, at some point in time, the court is going to determine the meaning of the phrase sincerely held religious belief.
Just for clarification, House Bill 279 was codified in the Kentucky Acts, it's Chapter 111. If any, that's what has been codified.
Okay, I got one more.
Good.
Under 96.13, education, it talks about, I think here, let's see. Never mind, it's fine.
So no more on
I
9613?
think not. I think I'm done. Well, I would just like to say that I really wish you could, Mr. Moore, draft this so that under 96.01, it says, it is the policy of the city of Frankfort for all individuals within the city of Frankfort to be free from discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodation based on irrelevant characteristics. And then we include everybody. Like fat, ugly, arrogant, non-golfers, non-tennis players. I mean, I would really like to be totally fair if we're going to have a fairness ordinance. Because to be quite honest with you, my whole problem with this has been that it's just much too limited. I don't like special groups. And the reason I don't like special groups is my 25-year history has been working in an area that deals with special groups and special labels. And I have a different perspective than many people because I see how those labels tend to encourage people to use them in a very negative way. Those labels actually become disabling in and of themselves, and it makes this whole process a burden on society. And let me just also add, in my research, my reading research, not just my questioning in the Krogers and in the streets and calling up the people that supported me to get their insights, both pro and con, because I'm really struggling with this because I probably think too deeply about things. But I just forgot what I was going to say, Mayor. But, my reading research. I'm reading that we have been moving in the recent decades to becoming more accepting of this and this issue. So my question is, if we're moving in that direction on our own, out of our own strengths and our own enlightenment and our own progress, why would a government entity want to step in and impede the progress that's being made? I don't understand why, our child learns to tie his shoe, so now we want to step in and help him do it. It's like we don't progress when we ask the government to keep doing more and more for us. What? I'm sorry. I got distracted by some noise or voice or whatever. I know this is going to pass, but I just, and I don't have a problem with people being gay or lesbian. I don't have a problem with that all from a personal perspective. But my problem has been all along with the idea of government coming in and doing more and more for us, and we think we're receiving, but in the end, all we're doing is giving up more and more rights, becoming more and more dependent on government, and less able to do things for ourselves. And I don't think Frankfort has a problem because I've asked too many people. I've put the bait out there more than once. I've put the bait out there 5 or 6 times. Give me an example of having been discriminated against in employment or housing, and not one person has given me one. I get examples of everything else, and I fear that what we're going to do in Frankfort is send the message out there that we've got this horrible problem in Frankfort that we need to fix with an ordinance. And we don't have that horrible problem because there are people that are of that different orientation that are living here and working in other places. So I don't know that it's a housing problem. I know that where I work, the research tells me that people of these different orientations are 2% of the population. Where I work, I know we have a much greater percentage than that because we have more than 2% just in my building alone of people that are gay. All right, now I know that I'm in academia, but as I've said before, we don't emerge from the womb into academia. So at some point along the line, people have overcome obstacles and gone beyond and succeeded. And I am afraid for the people that are gay, lesbian, transgendered, otherwise, that this will actually be a setback. And it's really hard for people to understand my saying that because most people don't work where I work. I'm not talking about Kentucky State University. I'm talking about having worked for 20, 25 years in the field where I deal with labels, and I really do see how it disables people. The disability, the biggest disability people have, it's the label they wear on the forehead. The label, I am bipolar, or I am whatever, I am disabled, I am gay, we are all more than our sexual orientation, we're all more than anything that we have that burdens us. But, when we want to be treated special for it, it doesn't help us or the group to which we belong based on that characteristic. And I know, I'm going to say again, it's going to pass. I want to make sure we do it right when it passes. And I just want to tell people that are pushing this ordinance forward, I sincerely hope that it doesn't cause bigger problems, because I think what it's done is it's caused a lot of resentment that we didn't have before, or that I never heard about. And since many of my friends are gay or lesbian or bisexual or haven't figured it out yet, I don't want to see people experience more difficult situations. But definitely when this ordinance passes, we're sending a message out there. Frankfort's got a problem that we need to fix, and in fact, I think Frankfort's a very accepting city. And it's not based on my, closeted experience, because I have gone out and asked people. I have, actively tried to get information about this issue from everybody that I see. So I've spent a lot of time on this, and I see looks in the room like I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do, and I have a uniquely different perspective on this. And but anyway, I guess that's all I'm going to say, Mayor, for right now.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Did you want to go next? Or were you
They want me to go last.
Okay, Commissioner Haynes.
Yes, he's got more.
I just wanted to say that the ordinance itself has already been voted on to move forward.
Yes, it has.
So what we're trying to do right now is to look at the wording so that we can have the best possible wording for Frankfort. So I'm just hoping we get to that as we continue this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one more little thing I have
Okay, go
written
ahead.
in
And
here,
then I'll- and
if that's
Commissioner.
okay.
Sure.
Imputed heterosexuality.
Will you give me like the section number you're in?
This is on page 2 under definitions. An individual's actual or imputed heterosexuality, homosexuality, or bisexuality. It's like, there again, it's like, whose call is that? The whole idea about perception. Whose perception are we talking about? My perception of you, or your perception of my perception of you? It just all gets so abstract that how in the world will this ever be enforced? And Tommy, Commissioner Haynes, you're right, this is going forward, but we still have almost 2 months to really evaluate how do we want this to look when it happens. And I've got all kinds of concerns about the judgments that are going to be made, and so it's imputed. Is that okay, Mr. Moore, to have that word in there? I guess you think it is because it's there, but it's a bit problematic. I mean, when we come to enforcement, it's going to be a bit problematic, but...
Well, what it means is that if you treat somebody different because you think they're homosexual, and they may not be, then you would be in violation of this ordinance.
Because you think, but how is anybody going to know what you think? That's the whole problem. We can't, are we going to put people under brain scans all day long to be figuring out how they're perceiving things? I don't understand. Well, I mean, I know that this is here, and I know this is how people make laws, and this is how laws are written, but it's just, if people are going around telling me stories about being excommunicated from their church in their younger days, or bullied in high school, or beaten up on the street, or being asked to leave a restaurant in Cincinnati, that tells me that those incidents that happened long ago are still being carried with them now, which tells me that there is a resentment there, which tells me that what we might actually be doing here is a bit of retaliatory legislation. And I don't want innocent people in Frankfort to be, punished for things that happened to other people in the past in other cities and in different kinds of situations. So when we start looking at words like imputed and perception, perceived, that's a real problem for me when we're making a law for a group of people that already feel, and rightfully so, that people don't like them. Most people do like these people, but they've had a bad experience in the past that they bring to the present, and I just want, I've got that concern still, and I'm just pointing out, and I know the words probably got to be there, but it's problematic for me as well as perceived. It's very problematic for me. Are we going to ask people to have sex in front of us so we can really determine if our perception is correct?
I believe Commissioner Roach can answer.
I'm hoping to help
Okay.
city solicitor. Once we went down the road in 1964 with the Civil Rights Act and additional special classes that were added since then, every argument you've made, I understand them. and the same ones can be made for each one of those things. The fundamental issue is whenever the state decides that there is a special class, all of these problems you're talking about happen. You already know that.
I know.
So when you decide that something needs to be a special class, you better be really, really sure that there is a compelling state interest that is much greater than an individual person's liberty, or that's much greater than an individual person's economic or political liberty. And 3 people of this body have made that decision. So I guess to try to help city solicitor, everything you said, I understand it, but like I said, once we decide to make that a special class, you're going to use, every one of these definitions are going to be broad and vague,
I
and
know they
every
are.
one is going to be the kind that you could litigate all day long.
Exactly, and this decision won't be made until the vote meeting in August. So I'm still taking feedback, and I'm still weighing it, as I think every commissioner sitting up here should be, because this is a serious issue. If it were not serious, we would not be getting hundreds of emails from Louisville and Monterey and Monticello and Cadiz and Lexington and Richmond. This is an issue that's very serious, and I'm taking it very seriously. And we don't have a problem, or somebody would have told me of a situation, because I keep throwing the bait and nobody gives me a situation. And the situations that could be told to me would be private. I haven't revealed anybody's identity with any information I've shared. And so my point is, do we make ordinances that we don't in fact need to, as some person told me, to send the message that we're accepting? You send a message with declarations and resolutions. I would be all for an order that would say that no public employer, no public housing place in Frankfort will be allowed to discriminate based on this. But I do differentiate between public and private sector, and I'm starting to sound like a Republican, and that's okay, because I'm old enough to not have to be either one if I don't want to be, Democrat or Republican. But I really do believe that the more of this kind of thing we do, the more we walk on an individual's right and ability to make a good decision. The more we let the government do, the less able we become to take a stand and to do anything for ourselves. And you know what? Let me just add, I think for every person out there that would not rent to or employ a gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, asexual, or anybody else that would not hire or rent to that person, there's at least one more person that would rent or hire only that kind of person, and then the rest of us are somewhere in the middle. So I think that it is fair, because we all are going to experience discrimination based on something that we are by somebody, but there's going to be somebody else that's going to like us because we're that way. We cannot level the playing field. We can't make something fair that is by its nature not fair, and that is life. And the unfairnesses in life are what actually make us stronger people and bring out our strengths. And I am so tired of this country trying to, and you might not think it, but I believe it, trying to disable us, trying to do everything for us and treat us like little children so that we can't be strong. I am proud of my ancestors who worked through difficult times and experienced things that were not pleasant because it caused them to become successful. And I just think this is a disservice to that, let me make sure I get it right, LGBT, and I'm adding A for asexual because it hasn't been included, and I think it needs to be included for asexuals. And let me just also say, Commissioner Roach and everyone else, there is so much confusion over this ordinance. And if I've got these questions, Mr. Moore, and I've got a PhD, I know that people out there have as many questions as I do. But people think this ordinance is about civil unions and gay marriage. That's what a lot of people think this is. No, that is not this. This is not that. People think that we should all be fair. And there's not a single person in this room or probably out there in Franklin County that would say, no, life needs to be unfair. Nobody would say that that's got any common sense. This ordinance is not a fairness ordinance. I think that's what we call it because it makes everybody up here feel guilty if we happen to disapprove of it and nobody wants to say, I believe we should all be unfair. I don't really appreciate that. I wish you would call this something else, because I believe in fairness. We all believe in fairness. It's an abstract goal out there that we all try to move towards that we will never reach. So I think that it would be more appropriate to call this something other than what it is, and to give it a different name, at least the group that's working on this. Because I guess I've said everything there is to say, but I definitely want the gender identity fixed, because I don't want to be discriminated against because mine manifests the same as my sexual organs. I want to be protected as well as anybody else does.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I think the solicitor had a response on the reason for some of the drafting and definition, under definitions, and where that language was.
Under the, thank you, Mayor, under the use of the term imputed, that came from an existing, from Louisville's ordinance. And of course, there are innumerable areas of the law where bodies have to determine someone's intent. And so, you know, that's done on a daily basis in the courtroom or in an administrative hearing. And then one other thing is that you are correct, Commissioner, in that in order for this ordinance to take effect, it has to have two separate readings, and that has not occurred yet.
Well, we need to clean it up first. And
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Hedden was next.
Was Tommy done?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Haynes? All right. Under definitions, I've looked it up myself, but City Solicitor, I would like to ask, what is the definition of a small business in the state of Kentucky? How many employees is it? In the state, when you look at Chapter 3, KRS Chapter 344, which is the chapter that deals with civil rights, Kentucky's civil rights statute applies to businesses that have, I believe it's 8 or more employees. And of course, what I did is I used you all had requested me to model it after our Fair Housing Code. Yes.
So that's why you have 2 or more. An employer is defined as 2 or more employees. And I think it probably would make a lot of sense from a legal standpoint to make the fairness ordinance consistent with KRS Chapter 344, so that when you're talking about an employer, the employer is an entity that employs 8 or more individuals. I believe it's for at least
20 weeks.
20?
20 weeks. Right.
20. I would ask that for that to be changed to 8 and 20.
So
Under
consistent
employer.
with KRS 344?
Yes, sir. I don't know if the rest of the commission agrees. Personally, that's what I would like to see there.
Can we read that real quick, just to make sure we're all on the same page? You have that language. I have it, but I would let you read that from the...
Right. 344.030 says employer means a person who has 8 or more employees within the state in each of 20 or more calendar weeks in the current or preceding calendar year, and an agent for such person, except for the purposes of determining discrimination based on disability, which requires an employer to engage 15 or more employees in each of 20 or more calendar weeks. And so I think for consistency of these, I think that 8 or more employees for 20 calendar weeks makes sense.
And one other thing, Mr. Solicitor, is that if we change it from state to within the city of Frankfort.
Okay.
Next, I have a definition of family. I would like to personally thank Bob Paget, who's in the audience as well, who also sent a draft that he merged himself with adding some definitions. Thank you. With family includes a single individual, comma, or social unit consisting of one or more adults together with the children for which they have custody / care, so that it's not just limited to a single individual. It includes a social unit. It's not necessary, just
Better.
more clarification.
Would you say that one more time, please?
Family, a social unit consisting of one or more adults together with the children for which they have custody / care of, or a single individual. Or including. But not limited to a single individual. Does that sound okay, Lynn?
It sounds better than it was before.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? Rob, is there any conflict there with either state law regarding the not being able to have homosexual marriages, or any state law that has to do with adoptions, and all those other things that would have an interplay with that?
I think what I'd like to do is to look at the language that the commissioner proposed, and then look at familial status along with that, and look at some other things. And just, I understand where you're going to be a little bit more inclusive and more descriptive. I may not use those specific terms, though.
Yes. And just for clarification as well, not everyone that lives together in homes are married. I have several friends that are divorced who have gone together and bought houses and share homes and mortgages with raising their children as friends. But they also get questioned when they go somewhere.
It's Commissioner Head.
It's the double H.
The shirts.
He likes to call me Sister Head.
Commissioner Head, go ahead.
96.14, under enforcement. My understanding, per reading this, that we are going to be instating a local human rights commission. Is this correct in my understanding?
That is the way this ordinance is drafted.
Right. With this being drafted, I don't think that we need 11 people on the board.
How many do we need?
I don't think 11. I think 11 is too many. I'd go with 5 to 7.
Well, I was thinking 7, so if that helps.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean I'm right, just asking.
I think 7.
I'm hoping we get rid of the commission, but if we have one, 5 to 7 makes a whole lot more sense than 11.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Who
If
came up
Commissioner
with,
Hedden will yield, she's got the...
I give you permission.
Okay.
because it's based on her 11, who came up with 11 and on what basis did they come up with that?
That was what was in the Woodville's ordinance. I think, and that was just something that our solicitor just pulled language that was already there, just because I think that was kind of the direction we had given the solicitor. We weren't very specific, we just said take elements of Louisville and Covington and others and merge
We
it.
do want to,
So I'm sorry, so Commissioner, did that answer your question?
Okay. So we have the mayor or fairness officer, meaning if we don't have a fairness officer at the time, you are AKA the fairness officer. Automatically?
That's the way I understand it, that's what the current fair housing ordinance, that's already the current law, and we're just adding fairness to it.
Right.
I can tell you one thing, while I'm mayor, I will definitely be appointing a fairness officer.
Okay.
Can't speak for future mayors, so if there's concern, we have to think about that too.
Now, with that, we need to look at 96.15A, if we're changing it from 11 members to 7, that we also need to look at, of the first members, 3 shall be appointed for 1 year, 4 shall be appointed for 2 years, and 4 shall be appointed for 3 years. We need to change that math. So do you just get rid of the last 4?
Commissioner, if I could ask, it's a question. I had looked at that and said we would do 3 members appointed for 1 year, 2 for 2, and 2 for 3 as a suggestion, and that was one of the changes.
Okay, well, it needs to get looked at
So 3
if
for
we're
1
instating
year.
a Human Rights
Let's just-
Commission.
I just threw that out. You got to think about the math. It's only going to be a couple of options, unless we get into factorials. Just kidding. That was supposed to be a math joke. Nobody, I know, only the math people. Sit down. Any combination, you can do it any. I just thought it was easier to say 3, 2, and 2, but you can say 4, 2, and 1, 4, 1, and 2, 1, 2, and 4, 2, 4, and 1, 2, 1, and 4.
3.14.
3.1. We can't do, well, it has to be whole numbers.
Keep going.
Yeah, just keep going. I mean,
Good.
you mean just making up number games, or?
No, I was
I
thinking just keep,
We just need to make sure that that written meets the numbers.
Agreed.
With the local Human Rights Commission being instated, I had asked questions before saying, do we need a local Human Rights Commission? Of which I was told that no, we do not, which is why our local Human Rights Commission subsided, I guess is a correct term to use, no longer used. And we were told that since we are in the capital, correct, Solicitor, is this correct? That since we are in the capital, that we could just use the state Human Rights Commission. I just want clarification.
Right, we have a Kentucky Human Rights Commission.
We'll cover those two categories.
It's located up in Louisville.
Yes.
They've got mediators, and they've got lawyers, and they've got personnel, and they've been doing that job for a long time, and they do a good job. I've appeared with clients before it several times. But the Human Rights Commission can only handle complaints as set forth in the statute. And of course, the Kentucky Civil Rights Statute does not provide protection for LGBT. So if we refer a complaint that someone's made about being treated or being discriminated against because of homosexuality, perceived or imputed homosexuality to the Human Rights Commission, they're going to say, we don't have jurisdiction to hear that. So that's why the local Human Rights Commission would deal only with issues concerning LGBT or where you have allegations of discrimination based upon sexual identity or gender that are made at the same time as one of the traditional types of discrimination is alleged to have occurred as well. So if you say that person is discriminating against me on the basis of my race and also because I'm a homosexual, then that complaint would need to be heard by the local Human Rights Commission.
But if it was race only, you could go straight to the state.
That's exactly right. And of course, the way this works, just for the public, is that you have a fairness officer. A complaint, or someone makes a complaint to the fairness officer, because the mayor has indicated that he's going to appoint one if the ordinance passes. The fairness officer would attempt to get the parties to come together and conciliate and reach an accommodation and hopefully shake hands at the end and treat each other well thereafter. If that attempt to conciliation doesn't work, then at that point, if the individual has been discriminated against on the basis of his gender identity, then that individual could either file a complaint with the local Human Rights Commission, and the local Human Rights Commission would have its hearing officer hold a hearing at which evidence would be presented. The hearing officer would make a recommended findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommended order to the human rights, the 7 or 5 member local human rights commission, and they would determine whether or not to accept that those findings of fact, conclusions of law and order. They find that a violation occurred or it did not. Or, in the alternative, instead of filing with the local human rights commission, according to this ordinance, they can file directly with the local district court if their claim is for less than $4,500 in damages, or with the local circuit court if their claim exceeds $4,500 in damages. So if the commission wanted to, you can say, we don't want a local human rights commission. We want the fairness officer to make the decision on whether or not a violation has occurred. Or the commission could say, we want people, if someone believes that they've been discriminated against, we want them to either file with the local human rights commission if they're alleging gender discrimination, or if it's race discrimination, with the Kentucky Human Rights Commission. We don't think that there should be the ability to file directly into circuit court. We want to handle this administratively, not in the legal system. So you've got some options here. That may be more information that you want, but that, that's, I put that in here for you all to consider because it is, it's somewhat complicated. For example, the little city in eastern Kentucky, they just have a fairness. They actually have one of the commissioners that acts as the fairness officer, and the fairness officer determines whether or not the discrimination has occurred. They don't have a local human rights commission.
I mean, I have to digest it, that's a lot to take in and try to make. Should I move on?
Sure.
It's a lot to take in. As well as the rest of the commission, have received tons of information, phone calls, concerns, and the whatnot, when it comes to saying, I can't hire whoever I want. Well, you do an interview process when you own a business. And when you do the interview process, you interview the individual. And it's your choice as a business owner to hire who it is you think is best suited for the position that you are hiring for. I know from my position where I work that we do an employee evaluation of every person who comes in to work in our department. We all take a survey. We all decide, is this the individual we want? Is this person going to fit in our mix? It's not about discrimination. Do they have the credentials? Do they seem like they're going to come into this workplace and maybe file a disability claim and live on disability the rest of their life? You don't know. But as humans, they say we don't have instinct, but we only have intuition. I think that there is a bit of human instinct when it comes to talking to people. And if you're a small business owner and you're worried that somebody's going to try to file a claim against you, maybe you should have listened to your gut and not hired that person when they came in for their interview process. Government follows society in a lot of means when it comes to setting up regulations within their city, their county, their state, their nation. The military is a prime example. When it comes to setting up segregation, the military brought the blacks in, then the laws changed. If it came up for a majority to vote on a minority when it came to anything, the minority will always lose because the majority will count them out. As a woman, I would never have the right to vote if it came up to a majority to vote on a minority. This ordinance isn't about same-sex marriage. This ordinance is about anti-discrimination when it comes to the workplace and when it comes to housing. The state can make the other laws that they want. Our legislators can pass those, or we can send it to a vote to be done at a ballot so that we can all show up. I support this ordinance. I don't know how strongly I feel about having a Human Rights Commission. I don't know how necessary the entire Human Rights Commission is per this ordinance, if just having a fair housing officer might be the best bet. But the rest of the commission can discuss that.
Did you say fair housing officer, or did you mean fairness officer? I want to make sure I heard correct. I apologize.
The fairness officer.
Fairness officer. Thank you, Commissioner Hidden. Did you have a question, Commissioner Bowers, before I get into Commissioner Roach's?
Oh, you can go to him first.
Okay. Commissioner Roach.
Well, like everybody else, I want to thank everybody. This has been I guess thanking you for something that's not very comfortable. I guess that's hard to do, but I will have to say everybody's been really civil and been kind. And in the 500 or 600 emails I've gotten, I've pretty much said the same answer. Thank you for your input. Only because if I had responded with a paragraph or two for each one, I'd still be writing. But, and to be honest with you, most of you on the pro and con pretty much wrote the same thing. So if, once you've gotten it 20 or 50 times, you've pretty well got that argument. I've got a number of things, and, I think, like I said, as Rob is, Mr. Moore's taking notes, we can do that. And then, obviously, if there's no support for it, I don't see any point in wasting time. If there is, 3 people for it, I'd say proceed. And then if there's some sort of uncertainty, maybe we can get some certainty so we can get through this quicker. I appreciate Commissioner Hedden and making it consistent with state law. That was one that I had. One thing I would ask is, I think all schools should be exempt from the entirety of the ordinance. The schools should be in charge of their own dealings with these issues. It's difficult, it's sensitive, and I don't think we should be involved in dealing with the schools.
Are you talking about public school?
Yes. I know about public schools and private schools, because a private Christian school would be exempt under the ordinance, maybe. That's the way it's written. I'm always a little nervous about exemptions, which is why I've got something a little later. But I think the public schools and private schools that are non-Christian should be exempt from the ordinance.
That's, my comment on that?
Well,
Are we voting?
do y'all want to go one at a time, or
I
do you
think we
want to do
should.
all of yours and then we'll come back and...
I better go one at a time, would be my guess.
Okay, how many, does anyone else, I'll just ask it this way, is there 3 people that agree with exempting schools?
Where's that located?
It is a new proposal that Commissioner Roach is bringing up. That this ordinance would not apply to schools, that public schools would be exempt, and we would have to put language in that, I'm not sure exactly where we'd have to do it, but
Just put it under
I
exemptions.
guess under 96 and under exemptions.
Mayor?
Or you would do it in employer, say, that public schools should not be considered an employer.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
I will just disagree. I think that if anywhere this would apply, it would be in the school system, the public school system, or any public agency, because that would be the one place that I think we should have an ordinance like this. It's a public place, and we're trying to teach people to be accepting, and we certainly don't want to teach people to be exclusive. So, Commissioner, that's just the one place I think we would need it if we needed it anywhere. Private schools, I don't really have an opinion either way.
I mean, I guess the quickest way is if two others that agree, just say we agree. And if you don't agree, you don't have to say anything, or you can say you don't agree. So I don't, as of now, I don't think there's enough support to exempt the schools, so we'll go to the next one. Sorry.
I'm all right.
Unless Commissioner Hadden, do you have a question?
I just would like to say that if it is a private school that's set up with religious basis, that
It's going to be exempt.
it would be exempt.
We'll see. That's the way it's written.
It's the way it's written, and the way it should be followed through. It's the way it's written, the way it should be interpreted. But as Solicitor Moore would tell you, everything's open to interpretation.
Do you think, under our current proposal and under current laws, that private schools, parochial schools, would be exempt from this ordinance? If not specifically? If not
Mayor,
more-
you have some private schools that are not
The
parochial.
only one we have is Capital Day, isn't it, within the city?
Good Shepherd is a private, it's a parochial school, but
It's in city limits? Because it's right on
it's
that,
right on the,
that weird area.
I think it's on the outside,
He says
just
no.
barely.
It's in the county, isn't it? As is the Christian Academy. It's in the county.
But that wouldn't preclude someone new, if someone wanted to
If
start a new
someone wants
school
to- right.
and homeschool. Not that the homeschool's going to hire people, but you don't know.
Well, they have cottage schools, you know, where homeschoolers go to a place and there might be 15 or 20 or more. Okay.
And I don't want to try to make things more complicated, but what about specialty kind of schools? I don't think we might don't have any, but we could. Just a thought.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right. I think I'd like a couple of things regarding the exemption with on religious grounds. One thing I would like for language that reflects that religious entities should be wholly exempt from the entirety of the ordinance, which is a little bit stronger language than what we have.
I'm okay with that.
I don't think that changes, I think it just makes it more, I think it just clarifies what some folks' concerns are. So I think that would,
I'll go through and make sure if it needs to be tweaked, we'll make it a little stronger.
okay, so
Thank you.
there's agreement on that,
All
I
right.
think, right? Everybody, okay, agreement on
Well,
that.
should it just be a definition of religious
Well,
organization?
yeah, I had some things that are related to that and
Just adding maybe a definition, maybe?
well, perhaps, I think a more blanket statement within that would help. A related one, which is a clarification, and I don't know where everybody stands on this. There's actually sort of two clarifications. One, you know, where there's that language with the state law, the one that you were telling us about that had been codified in whatever that number was,
Act
Mayor.
Chapter 11.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I suggest that we have some specific language that would make sure that people have that exemption. Most people that are here today that are opposed to this ordinance, they're opposed to this ordinance for several reasons. One, most people that are opposed to it are going to believe that homosexuality is wrong as a lifestyle. And that's one of the big debates. We've not talked much about it, but obviously that's one of the debates. The other thing is that they're going to believe that basically that the fairness ordinance is really unfair because what it's doing is forcing them to accept something against their beliefs, which is unfair to them, but may be fair to somebody else. So I suggest that we have some sort of a language that reinforces what we have from the state, which says something like this: a member of the clergy, religious organization, society, business, or any person exercising a sincerely held religious belief regarding marriage, sex, and/or sexual behavior shall not be charged with or found guilty of an alleged or actual violation of this ordinance for acting upon or exercising that belief. So it basically uses that language from the state, makes it a little bit stronger so that there's no loophole. But it does, in some ways, emasculate parts of the ordinance. But it does carve out an exception that's pretty strong for individuals.
And also allow with the provisions of the House Bill 279 with that.
I think this is stronger than that.
It is stronger, but just,
I'm looking up the language.
The difference is, when you look at the chapter, language of chapter 111, if the city can prove by clear and convincing evidence that it has a compelling governmental interest in infringing the specific act or refusal to act, and has used the least restrictive means to protect the city's interest, then, even if the person has a sincerely held religious belief, the city's compelling governmental interest prevails. For example, every lawyer that's ever gone to law school has studied the peyote button case, and that's where there is a tribe of American Indians, Native Indians, that part of their religious ceremonies involve the use of peyote buttons, which is an illegal hallucinogen. It's an illegal drug. And of course, they claim, well, we should be able to be allowed to use that illegal drug because we're using it in our religious ceremonies. And the court said no, because it ruled that the government had the right to determine what was legal and illegal, and said in that case that drug was illegal. So certainly I can draft it up that way, and we'll do so. But I would have to provide you all with some of the caveats so you can consider whether or not you want to go that far.
Sounds good to me.
I'm looking, one of that was a new chapter of chapter 440, KRS 446, and it was codified under Acts chapter 111. So I don't think we can to look at, trying to see the actual language.
I mean, the city can provide language that's more protective. We can't make the city's ordinance less protective than the
That's right.
state's law, but we can provide a statute that's or an ordinance that's more protective than the state statute.
And I guess what I would say, and I understand the pro and con on this, but this goes a long way toward, I think, easing the concerns of people that are opposed to this ordinance. I realize when you lose, you don't get everything that you want, but this does go a long way toward easing their concerns because it's not an infringement on their liberty anymore.
Well, we would need to tweak this provision substantially, because one of the unintended consequences of drafting it like that would be that if someone claimed that in my church we smoke marijuana, and that's part of our religious ceremony, and it's part of our sincerely held religious belief that marijuana enables us to communicate with our God better.
Well, I don't think that language applies to that, because the language I set forth with you dealt with religious beliefs regarding marriage, sex, and/or sexual behavior, unless they're dealing with marijuana as part of a sexual or marriage ceremony.
We would need to look at that very
Right.
carefully.
I'm just saying that if what I had said didn't have anything to do with those things.
Maybe, maybe not, depends upon your religion.
Marriage, sex, and/or sexual behavior.
If I could add this, in that language as it was passed, it was amended with House Floor Amendment number 2, that got incorporated into the final version, and it does say that there's a lot, it says require that the burden to a person's freedom of religion be substantial. And again, this is all getting back to statute construction. So I'll just throw that out.
Well, and the governor vetoed that law, and it was overridden.
So it passed.
So anyway, I think we need something clearer and stronger, and so that's why I brought it up. And just want to see what everybody else thinks.
Is that an issue that folks are clear enough to make a decision, or do you want to get further clarification through our city attorney on that one?
I'd have to have further clarification because I really haven't looked at House Bill 279 and all the codification that have happened. So I was okay with the language here as long as the seriously held religious beliefs, if that could, could be stronger, but I don't know if it can go as far as, I just don't know. As it
Any
just
other
stated.
commissioners want to make a decision or get further clarification through our city attorney? And it will not
Sure.
impede anything other than just we won't decide today. Next Monday, we will.
That's fine.
Okay, so solicitor will get further clarification, and that's acceptable, then we'll have that on the next Monday.
Thanks, Mayor. Something kind of related to that one too, as something to add to, or I'd like to see us look at adding to 96.11, is that something that would read, this section shall apply in any legal or administrative proceeding under this chapter, whether or not the city or other governmental authority is a party to that proceeding. And I'd ask Mr. Moore to kind of give the caveats again on that.
I think that it applies automatically the way that it's drafted, but we can review that.
Yeah, I'd just be afraid to take private action.
It would apply.
So, okay, if you could look at that. And then, I don't know where everybody, I listened to what Commissioner Hedden said, and it sounds like she's sort of still weighing it. I don't believe we need a local human rights commission. And that, and along with that, I think basically that the commission should appoint or should designate a city employee to be the person that deals with these issues. And then that if there's any appeal, that the commission be involved in that. I don't see the need for it. And then it looks like from reading the ordinance that there's a kind of a weird juxtaposition between the State Human Rights Commission and the local Human Rights
Yeah.
Commission, because it sounds like we're referring all of our items to the State Human Rights Commission when they don't even deal with these issues, the gender issues that we're talking about here today. So I would be inclined to drop the, not have a local human rights commission, let people deal with the state and the EEOC in the areas in which it covers. And then if we're going to have this ordinance, then have them deal with a staff person. That person would do the investigation and issue the whatever we end up saying what the enforcement is. And then if there's an appeal, that it go to the commission.
Can I get a clarification?
Yes, sir.
Tim, can you refer to the different sections that you're talking about so I can look at those real quick? You're talking about the whole part about 9615 where it creates the Human Rights Commission,
Yes, sir.
but you said you had concerns about...
There's also a part, and I don't have all these down, Mayor, and I apologize, but there's also a part where it says that when we have things filed with us, we'll send it on to the State Human Rights Commission.
Okay, that's what I was looking at under 96.9612.
9614.
And I'm saying there's going to be like different, I just want to make sure I'm looking at all the sections to see what that does.
But I think the main thrust of what I'm saying is I don't think we need a local human rights commission, and I do not think we need I think we just need to designate a current employee to deal with this issue, because based on the information we've heard from the pro-fairness people, I don't believe it's going to be something that's going to occur very often. So I don't think it's going to be something that's going to require all of this level of bureaucracy to deal with.
In 96.114A, Mayor, this provides that if someone makes a complaint, they of course file it with the city clerk. And then the clerk forwards the statement to the mayor or to the fairness officer. A copy of that complaint would also be provided to the State Human Rights Commission, the local Human Rights Commission, and then of course the person who supposedly committed the violation. But in providing a copy of that to the State Human Rights Commission and the local Human Rights Commission, then that enables those entities to, first of all, know what kind of complaints are being received, whether it's one every 10 years or one every month. And it also enables those entities to monitor that so that if nothing ever happens, you know, they can check into it, make sure the fairness officer is doing his or her job, or is just letting the complaints sit on their desk and not taking any action. So that is somewhat of an information gathering practice, but it did come from the fair housing provisions of the current ordinance.
And if I may, Commissioner, just to further
Go ahead.
clarify, that the question you had was, or the concern you had was, does this automatically send things straight to the State Human Rights Commission? Because under the current ordinance for the fair housing, it does on all of those specifically.
Right, and we just borrowed that language, which doesn't apply on this, in my,
May or may not.
depending on what the issue is. And I guess I was wanting to hear where everybody was on just having a Human Rights Commission to begin with.
Well, my concern was for making sure that there is a checks and balance system in place, that we do have Human Rights Commission, and let the others chime in.
I think that I would rather have one, and interestingly, this whole fairness ordinance emerged out of the initial thing that came to the commission in that room across the hall was, are we interested in a human rights commission? And this whole fairness ordinance followed behind that, so I'm not sure why it was presented that way, the commission before, but I think I would rather have a commission, because I think that you get at least, if we're going to have seven different perspectives on any given situation, which I think is always better than one outside perspective. I think it just makes it more, I don't want to use the word fair, not quite fair, but more perspectives go into the decision. I would rather have the commission than to not have it.
So that sounds like one that maybe we've got varying opinions on, that we'll need to look at it.
Well, we've heard from three of us. Do the other two commissioners have ideas?
I don't have a strong opinion on either one. I definitely know that we need the mayor and the fairness officer. You know, that has to happen. And if it's as low a number as projected, we could probably work with just that at the current time. I've not worked with the State Human Rights Commission, so I've read that we send, you know, certain other reports out there. So I'm kind of, I could go either way. I don't know if you do it with the smaller number first and see how, you know, how many cases and stuff we actually have, because we can always, you know, years from now, if it need be, do the State Human Rights Commission. Or do you go with the big number now and have people that, you know, you only call on, you know, upon need. So it's definitely one of those worth discussion.
Okay, any others? Okay, so this one is, go ahead,
Now,
Commissioner.
looking at it, if I were to be a person that filed a complaint, I would feel much better knowing that a body of 7 was making a decision than one individual, especially in a town this small. I mean, I don't know what other people think, but
Could you draft it both ways? Or, I don't know, Mr. Moore, what's the,
Sure, I can certainly put together just a
not giving you more to
draft
do.
that says
That's a good idea, though.
just has a fairness officer, does not have a local human rights commission.
But still draft it, still leave the draft as it is, that
Yeah.
sets it up and then have the other, so then we can get its first reading and not have to have a substantial amendment.
So we have both,
We have
both
both.
ways. Another one, if we're ready for another one. I guess the next couple I have, and then I'll be done, is, I think are important, but I don't know where everybody is. I thought the fact that you paid a $500 fine and could serve a year in prison was outrageous. And I would strongly oppose a one-year prison term for violating this ordinance. And I'd be honest with you, I think $500 is excessive. We don't charge either one of those things for hardly anything that we have ordinances on.
To respond, this is the current penalty section under 96.99 that deals with our fair housing ordinance. So for consistency, what we did was just added in the local human rights commissioner, hearing officer, and local human rights.
$1,000 in a year in jail, isn't it? Or.
And then the prevailing party may recover from the non-prevailing party the cost of the administrative proceeding, court cost and reasonable attorney fees.
Like, I guess to broaden my area of where I'm going, I think the violator should pay a fine of $100. There should be no prison term. It should not go through the court system at all. It should be an administrative proceeding and a penalty of a maximum of $100.
Mayor, I would agree with the part about the no prison term, but I think $100 might not be much of a deterrent. So I would be for scrapping the prison, but stick with the 500.
Mayor, just for clarification now, maybe I got the wrong copy. I thought it was not more than $500. So
It
it's
says not more than.
Not more
Okay,
than.
so it's not a $500 fine.
Well,
Mine
that-
says $1,000.
Yours
and-
is,
It's 500 under A and 1,000 under B, right?
1,000 would be punitive damages, that's where you have really, there are standards, you can get, under Kentucky law, you can get general damages, which are basically compensatory damages where you're being compensated for your injury. Then you can also get punitive damages, which are also referred to as smart money. And that's where you have, aware of the law, you have intentionally and flagrantly violated it. So under the ordinance as drafted, if you are aware of the statute or the ordinance and you intentionally and flagrantly violate it, then in addition to the $500 penalty, whatever you all decide on the imprisonment, you could also have $1,000 punitive damages imposed.
That's up to.
Well, then let me modify my proposal and let's see where we are. I suggest that we drop B and that we drop the prison term, keep the $500, and also keep it out of the courts as an administrative proceeding.
I'll agree with that.
Okay, my concern with that is then we're creating two classes of penalties. One penalty would apply if someone says, I'm not going to serve somebody because of their religious belief. And that's going to be up to a $500 fine and not more than up to $1,000 punitive damage. But because I didn't want to serve the lesbian couple, they're only going to have to, then that's not as much of a violation or penalty as because I didn't serve the, I'm going to pick up, well, I'm not going to say, the XYZ priest because of his religious beliefs. So that means because I discriminated against this pastor and got up to a $500 fine, but I didn't serve the lesbian couple, then I only have to pay $100.
no, we have to be.
We're up to 500.
Or up to 500. But you said you're going to cap it at 100.
No, I changed.
Okay,
I'm
sorry.
trying to compromise.
I just think that we keep the, because if we're adding this, if we're adding protection, if we're including in the list of folks that are protected to prohibit discrimination against individuals in housing, employment, and public accommodation on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, familial status, disability status, then that means,
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll make it.
I think if we should keep them the same.
I'll make it easy. I'll propose we keep them the same and apply that same language, dropping B and making it $500 and doing it for all the other classes too the same way.
So I don't have mine's not draft, I don't have the copy that you have the B, the court may grant. Okay, I just don't
I guess
have, mine just got
the
printed out.
bottom line is, I don't think it should go to the courts. I think the fine is too high, but if y'all want to make it $500, that's fine. I don't think we should have punitive, and I don't think you should have to go to prison.
I agree with the
It's
prison
okay,
part.
because mine just didn't have the B printed out. I've got the same. I guess my concern on it is, if we're going to make this include, we're going to include gender identity and sexual orientation to the definition of fair housing and public accommodations, et cetera, then we should keep the penalties the same, because any violation should be held to the same standard.
Mayor, can we just
And
amend?
of course,
It almost seems-
the way it's drafted right now is that all the violations would be
The same.
the same standard. And of course, if you wanted to take out the imprisonment provision, which makes me a little nervous. I mean, if you take that language, fourth line down, so you
It's too
say
strong for
shall be
all.
fined no more than $500, and then delete the language or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both, then the penalties for the violation of either fair housing, public accommodation, or employment would all be consistent. I did look at, when you look at KRS 344, the civil penalty is substantially higher than our ordinance, but I do not believe that it authorizes imprisonment for a violation of the civil rights statute.
In 344? Well, it should be the same whatever we do, because we don't want to say that one violation is more of a violation than the other.
Well, I'll support making them consistent. I just think they should be consistently modest.
Okay, as of now, they are, under the current section 96.99 under the penalty section, they are consistent. And the consistency is that any violation of the definitions under this chapter would be up to a $500 fine or imprisoned for more than 1 year, and then punitive damages would be not more than $1,000.
Right. Now, let me make it clear. What I'm saying is, I think that is too harsh for any of those categories.
I hear you. I know what he's saying.
Yes.
We want to scrap the prison. Can we just take that out? Prison,
It's up
it's
to the
gone.
majority.
That's what you're saying, right?
Right, and I'd like to scrap B, the punitive.
Well, I think there needs to be some harsh penalties if someone gets discriminated because
Well, $500 is pretty,
because of their race or their religion or their national origin.
well, they're going to
People
be,
can always, then people, it's just a $500, up to a $500 fine, so we'll just pay it.
that's more than most of them we have down here.
Under B,
And most of ours don't get paid.
under B, the court could also grant relief as it deemed appropriate, any permanent or temporary injunction. So for instance, if they say you have refused to employ John Doe because of his or her sexual orientation, the court could actually enter an injunction requiring you to, arguably could enter an injunction requiring you to employ a person in that position based on all factors except for sexual orientation. It could make you go back through the interview process.
I guess for me, the concern is then we're taking our fair housing ordinance that's been on the books, and we're weakening, reducing the penalty section.
And again, my
Yes, sir.
recommendation would be just to delete the provision concerning imprisonment.
What's the majority want to do?
That's what I want to do.
Deleting the imprisonment.
Is there three?
That's through.
Okay, so we're striking the word.
It's four, actually.
Okay, on taking out the word "or imprisoned." any reference to under 96.99B, we would strike, or put brackets and strike through on after $500 and put or imprisoned.
That would be 9699A, Mr. Mayor, and then B would require no change.
So the monetary penalty stays the same, but we take out the words or imprisoned.
So there's not enough support to get rid of B, is the way I'm understanding it. What about, and then the last piece on that is, I didn't hear what anybody said. I'd like to, and this may not be possible either, I'd like to keep this out of the courts and make it an administrative proceeding, but that would be, once again, an inconsistency. And I'm fine with it being inconsistent.
So you want to delete 96.18?
Yes, sir. I don't know the number, but I trust you.
So
Yes, sir.
96.18, enforcement by private persons. Is that what you're referencing?
Correct.
And I'm going to need to, what line are you talking about, or what sentence? Where it says
He wants
the
to
entirety?
delete the whole thing.
The entirety?
Yes, sir.
Well, that, again, that's our current fair housing and public accommodations law.
Right.
But Mayor, I
Which
mean,
was-
since we're on this fair housing, if it needs tweaking, there's nothing wrong with tweaking the whole thing. In other words, whatever we tweak can apply to every group, not just one, is what I guess.
I'm just afraid I just don't like to see it weakened. So, but if there's three that want to do it, I would just caution that we seem to be weakening our current laws to make it easier for people to discriminate.
But on those other classes, Mayor, there is very, very significant state and federal law that is much stronger than anything we have written here.
There are three that want to
Commissioner,
delete 96.18.
can you read it like you want it to read? Can you tell me again what you want it?
I just want it struck for what we're dealing with, which is the fairness aspect of this, because I don't want it to go to the court system. I don't want it to be a subject for the courts. But now that's my opinion. That's why I brought it up.
Is there three to delete 96.18? Okay, I'm going to, we'll go to the next one then. Thank you, Commissioner.
Which one is the one about education? Mr. Moore?
I believe that's 14, maybe. 96.13.
I'd like to drop that one.
Why? Can I ask him why? Can you tell
Sure.
me why?
If he doesn't have to answer, but if he'll
Well, I'd
answer.
be happy
I know
to
he will,
answer.
but I always have to say.
That's all right. I think it's a waste of time.
Well, can I respond?
Yeah.
I don't see how it's a waste of time when people out there, I'm asking, tell me what you think about the fair, they don't have any clue what this ordinance is about. And I think that's a really necessary component.
And you may be right. I think local business people and people like that, they're not going to want to waste their time on this. And they'll comply to the best of their ability, but they don't want to go be indoctrinated and be told, if they happen to not agree with this ordinance, that to be fair, they need to do these things. So just pass it, hold them to that standard, but don't, I don't see any point in this, but like I said, I'm fine. If y'all want to go on with it, that's fine. I just was bringing it up.
I'm okay with keeping it because I think education is the key of any of these.
Anyone else for deleting?
Mayor?
Yes.
If I may.
Let's listen.
One question on 96.13, and again, this language coming from the fair
Fair housing.
housing. is it indicates that either you or the Fairness Housing, or excuse me, Fairness Officer shall call conferences of persons in the housing industry and other businesses. Would it be appropriate to tweak that so that a conference is just one of the options that the Fairness Officer has or you have?
I think that you all.
Yeah, would may call, make it optional?
Because you may instead want to just go to a chamber meeting and have
Right.
a special presentation there.
I like this. I think that's good.
So we'll change the word shall to may under where it says he or she shall call conferences of persons in the housing industry, et cetera. It will say he or she may. Strike the word shall and insert may.
And I may add that if, with your all's approval, some other language such, or take other means to educate the public or something like that, so that there's some discretion what you can and can't do in getting the word out about the fairness ordinance.
So, Mr. Moore, on this education and conciliation, that wasn't in the housing.
Yes, it was.
That is in the
How many of those have we had in the last 10 years?
We used to work through our not Kentucky Housing, but Kentucky Housing Corporation does conferences and the Frankfort Housing Authority. Since I've
So
been
basically,
there,
they just do it.
That's what I've been
Okay.
doing.
All right, last thing. All along, I think people that are opposed to this ordinance have been troubled by the title. It's designed to make people opposed to this
Look bad.
look bad. And I really don't need any help to look bad, but that's the purpose. And the reason why is I believe it's largely propaganda. But regardless of what your views are on it, I don't think we as a city should use the title Fairness Officer, and I don't think we as a city should title this a Fairness Ordinance, and it may not end up having that title when it's when it's passed. But I think that we should come up with something that is less controversial toward the community. Now, that may have been a controversial statement, so I didn't mean for it to be. But, we're pitted now. If you're against this, then you're just automatically unfair. I believe that's an example of Jacobinism, like out of the French Revolution, and I believe that we should come up with a title that's less controversial.
I agree.
Well, as of now, we didn't title the ordinance. It's just adding,
So there won't be a title.
well, the actual ordinance title is probably in Chapter 96 under, it's fair housing,
Okay.
unless we changed it. Is that correct?
I would say fair housing, public accommodations, and employment.
Right, under Chapter 96.
Okay.
That's what it says now.
We just have housing,
Well, it's-
public accommodations, and employment.
It's fair housing,
Fair housing is already
is consistent
established.
with current law.
So all I'm saying is I would like for that not to be reflected as a title so that,
And it's not.
okay.
I mean, right now, if you look at on Chapter 96, it just is the current fair housing ordinance, which already says fair, it uses the word fair.
Right.
Fair housing. Fair housing, public accommodations, employment. That's what that chapter is titled.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, and so I guess the last things, I agreed, I think, with changing the definition under 9602 to employer that we made that change, which we've already done.
96 what?
96.02 under the definitions, under the word employer, where we changed that. The current proposal had 2 employees, and we changed it to reflect the current statutory language under 244, I'm sorry, Chapter 344. Under Chapter 344, that makes that definition 8 or more employees within, we'll change it to say within the city, in each of 20 or more calendar weeks in the current or preceding calendar. And I can read the entirety of the language, but the solicitor already read it, and we'll change the word, as Commissioner Hedden suggested, needed to be done from state to city. So we agreed on that, correct? And that was one of the things. And then the other, changing the membership from 11 to 7. And most of our boards and commissions that I looked at that we have if we did like a mean, and the median, the average is going to be 7 members. Some of them have more and some of them have less. The next highest number would be 5. So 7, that means it takes 4 people to agree or disagree if a case came before it, versus if you do 5, then that means it's 3, would be the majority. So a quorum would be, of 7 would be 4, a quorum of 5 would be 3. So it's just a matter of what folks feel most comfortable with. I think we agreed on 7, but I'm not sure.
I understand agreement of 7.
Okay. And then the first appointment would be for,
Well, you know, and Mayor.
Go ahead.
Also, that 7 makes, again, we're a small community, so your best friend has now had a complaint filed against. So I think 7 gives, you need to be able to have some recusals on there, so I think that's important to have.
well, and also the language says that those shall be appointed on a nonpartisan basis and should be broadly representative of employers, proprietors, religious groups, human rights groups, and the general public. So,
We want to
Should
make
be.
sure that it's fairly composed. And I don't know, that might be a whole nother problem in and of itself, but
May not be.
might not be, might be.
well, the one thing is then we would do the first members would do the 3-year, the first 3 would be appointed for a 1-year term. I'm just asking if this is okay. And 2 would be appointed for 2-year terms and 2 for 3-year terms? Or do you want to make some other?
I would say that the people that are the 1-year termers should be just a few, and
So
that the
switch.
people that should be the 2- and 3-year people should sit a little or that you would have more people sitting
Okay.
longer.
It doesn't matter. I'm just asking if what everybody feels most comfortable with. We just needed to, it's got to be some combination of 7.
So, like, 2, let's see,
3 for 1 and 4 for 2.
They're 3-year terms.
So basically, you wanted 2, 2, 3. You wanted a longer.
2 persons for 1 year.
Okay. Does anyone, okay, so if we do
You got that.
2 people for,
1 year, 2 people for 2 years, and 3 people for 4 years, or 3 years. Did that come out to 7? 2, 2, and 3.
that
2
is,
for 1, 2 for 2, and 3 for,
and that's Commissioner Roche's point. That's if there's agreement to do the Human Rights Commission, which we haven't completely determined yet.
Right.
So, all right, so there's,
can we determine that today? Or do people need to think about it?
well, I was okay with it. I don't know, we didn't have 3 people say for sure that they wanted to do it.
I want to do it. You want to do it. Do other people need time to think, or,
I do
Yes.
need time.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And then the other thing under Section 9611, which is the general exception, which we talked about, House Bill 279 from the 2013 regular session to connect the General Assembly. I don't know that we have to reference it by the statutory language, which it's a new chapter of KRS 446, and it was referred to in the Acts under Chapter 111 for 2013 for the acts of the regular session. I don't know if that really matters constructively, but that was the only other question. I think we've kind of addressed it. We can leave it.
It doesn't matter,
As
but
is.
if they've gone ahead and assigned a KRS number to it, then I would refer to that, so I'll check the.
Okay, it'll be a new section, Chapter 4, KRS 446, and it's Acts Chapter 111. And then I was thinking we were going to put in the language, and I didn't catch this until today. We don't have the language from the resolution incorporated, which would be easily done, I guess. And then I said something about maybe the legislative intent. It's the legislative intent and necessity to provide fair housing, public accommodations, and employment. And that helps clarify. I think, who was it that asked the one word? impute?
I was that person.
Commissioner Bowers, okay. And this would help
I think what-
possibly provide the legislative intent.
What I would like to
So if it does
see-
go to court, then at least there's a judge can look at it and see, 10 years from now, nobody's going to remember, somebody might not remember the intent, or 20 years from now, spelling out the intent just clarifies.
So, Mayor, is it my understanding that you want to add the language from this resolution?
Just as a first section or something, just,
Because that's contrary to what you all just discussed with respect to the name. So,
well, I was going to say that the part about fairness ordinance, we were going to take that out. Just, no, we won't make any reference to fairness ordinance. It'll just say fair housing, public accommodations, and employment. And I'll go back and look at it before the next meeting, just to be,
because those are five copies of that resolution, so there's one for you and one for...
oh, okay.
I was gonna see if he would read it to us, because we can read it ourselves,
It's-
right?
It's long, but
You know what I would like to see in this resolution? Since I have come up with my own, like, informal data that we're already fair, basically, that we already are accepting, based on what I see and hear, that this preface to this ordinance would make some mention of that we hope to continue to be. I certainly don't want to send the message all over the state, since all over the state is looking at us, that we have this huge problem, which I failed to find, despite that I keep going out looking for it and can't find it. I mean, and you know, I'm having lunch with some people later this week and next week and if I learn different, that's fine, but right now I think we have a city that is accepting of differences, and I would like some preference in this ordinance to reflect that, since the whole state is looking here. Is that possible, Mr. Solicitor?
Yes, that language would certainly...
Whereas we are a city that is accepting, we hope to continue to be, and I guess especially in the light of what's going on federally that's got people all up in the air, that we would convey that, and I expect there are going to be some problems based on what's happening federally, because some people are very upset about that we might start to see some problems that we haven't seen, but I don't know if people agree with that or not. It's just like,
so is anyone bothered by the resolution doesn't say it's a fairness ordinance, but it refers to the first clause that says, whereas the Board of Commissioners of the City of Frankfort believes that all individuals in Frankfort should be treated fairly with respect and dignity. Does the word fairly bother anyone?
no, I think it should come out and be treated with respect and dignity. But I think
We
that it
either
would
leave it or
be,
take it out, so whatever.
No, I'm fine with the wording, but based on what Commissioner Bowers just mentioned, I was looking at the very last line out of where it says, now therefore, it says, be resolved this day, the Board of
where are you?
Commissioners. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we would sort of have to change, since it's not going to be an actual resolution, we're just going to incorporate. I was saying
Okay. Right.
as
Yeah, take
in the
that out.
first chapter, first section, I guess, which would be, does this require us to renumber our sections?
I don't think it would.
Doing well.
We have them.
Because if I can put it up here right before chapter 96.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask.
where we go in.
Okay. But I want to make sure everybody's okay with that.
With what?
If we put this resolution language under chapter 96, where it says fair housing, public accommodations, and employment, then we list the wording from the resolution,
Just as it is?
with the exception of, I don't think you would say, now therefore be resolved this day, correct?
Correct, and if there's support for it, I would include language that indicates that whereas, the city of Frankfort has been a city accepting of, people of
All its
all
citizens,
races,
all of its
forms,
citizens.
creeds, et cetera, in order to continue to treat all individuals with respect and without discrimination, language along those lines.
Yes.
Is there any objection to that?
Nope.
Okay. And then if we could, I meant to, and I apologize, this is my fault, legislative intent sentence would be something where it is the legislative intent of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Frankfort, Kentucky hereby declares and finds that the legislative intent is to prevent discrimination based on the following definition, which includes race, color, religion, national origin, familial status, age, disability, sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation resulting. I guess we could put that under, we could sort of combine the resolution with that. I don't know if that would be.
Of course, we don't, our general practice is not to include the legislative intent section, but certainly if we want to include one that would go in with this resolution language, that's where we go.
Okay.
What? I don't feel that strongly one way or the other since, given my position, but what is the purpose of all of this?
The legislative intent, I was thinking.
Of putting it in there?
I thought it would just clarify, in case there are future challenges to any of these, that it would just clarify that the City Commission is trying to make very clear that we don't want any type of discrimination based on any of these.
But that's already in the first paragraph of the ordinance that y'all got in front of you, right?
It is, and legislative intent can sort of be, it's almost a redundancy, you might say.
Well,
It's to clarify, so when things do go to court, the judges have to make decisions, sometimes to try to figure out, well, I wonder what they intended, and that's why.
I think his first paragraph's pretty clear. Employment and public accommodation on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, familial status, blah, blah, blah. That's the first paragraph.
I was trying to think, where is the word, the word impute that Commissioner Bowers raised earlier is,
Oh, you want to know where that word is?
That was under definitions.
Sexual
And
orientation.
it's sexual
Page two.
orientation, second page.
I don't feel that strongly about it. I don't think we need the resolution included in the ordinance, but if everybody else wants it in there, that's, I mean, I can live with it.
I think it's real important that we send the message that I think is a true message, and as I said, if I find out different, I will certainly bring it back up, but the message I hear is we have a citizenry who is accepting already, and I know there's the odd people out there that are not, but those are, you're always going to have people that, you're always going to have a few that don't like any group of people, but I think in general what I'm finding is people don't have a problem with gay, lesbian, bisexual people here, and it's not been a problem, and I think it's real important that that become a preface to this ordinance, since the whole state is looking at this ordinance, and I have a feeling that what this ordinance is really intended to do is further legislation at the state level, and I don't want our reputation to be called into question to help what I believe to be a goal beyond this city. So I really think we need to send a message. We're already accepting, and we hope to continue to be. And I think that's important for our reputation, and I think that it's a truth. That's not just in there to convince somebody of something that isn't. I think it's a truth that needs to be reflected.
well, it's not like we have agreement
Okay.
on the resolution, but I'm not clear on the legislative intent part of it. If you don't feel comfortable with it, we don't have to do it.
It's a redundancy, and I don't
I
mind
think it
if
all
it's
should be
there.
included
If you want it
right in
there,
that
just put it there.
96.
Okay.
Make everybody happy with
But
it.
What
Is
did
that-
Commissioner Haynes say?
Now, I think it should all be included, right up there where, actually Commissioner Roche just read, that it actually covers everything. And if you use the wording here, it covers everything again,
Okay.
if we use that wording. And if we use, the Commissioner Bauer just said accepting of all, then it's already there. We just have to put it in that area at the top, instead of trying to put it somewhere else.
So does
That
mean
gives
we do
our
have-
intent.
We do have three to do that? I don't want to push something without folks agreeing, and I don't want to get accused of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we will include that, and I know that that's,
And where it would go, Mr. Mayor, would be, that language would generally go right above Chapter 96, so that
Yes.
you've got several additional paragraphs there. And then you've got your policy, which, it's kind of like the Marines, where you tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, then you tell them what you told them. So
Well, and I must say too, the intent of that for me is to prevent problems in court, if there are any. Okay, that's good. I want to thank you all. This has been great. Everybody was able to have some input, and I think we incorporated something from everyone. We thank everyone for being here and listening and being patient and understanding, and we hope that, obviously, none of us want to cause any undue burden on anybody in our community, and that's not what any of us are trying to do. So we thank you all and appreciate every one of you all for participating. And my special thanks to the commission and our wonderful staff. With that, since this is a special meeting, there's no other business we can deal with, so I'll entertain a motion.
I move to adjourn.
A second.
Moved by Commissioner Roach, second by Commissioner Bowers. Any discussion? Seeing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Roach?
Yes.
Commissioner Haynes?
Yes.
Commissioner Bowers?
Yes.
Commissioner Hadden?
Yes.
Chairman Hall?
Yes, we adjourn. Thank you all, seriously. That's pretty good.
The only question I have left, Mayor, is I don't want to put